Hi. All right, I've waited as long as I can. I cannot wait any longer. Let's head on back and see what's going on with Emily and Bagpuss.
Once upon a time, not so long ago, there was a little girl, and her name was Emily. And she had a shop. There it is. It was rather an unusual shop because it didn't sell anything. You see, everything in that shop window was a thing that somebody had once lost, and Emily had found, and brought home to Bagpuss. Emily's cat, Bagpuss. The most important, the most beautiful, the most magical, saggy old cloth cat in the whole wide world. Well now, one day Emily found a thing. And she brought it back to the shop and put it down in front of Bagpuss, who was in the shop window, fast asleep as usual. But then Emily said some magic words. Bagpuss, dear Bagpuss, old fat furry catpuss, wake up and look at this thing that I bring. Wake up, be bright, be golden and light. Bagpuss, oh hear what I sing. Bagpuss was wide awake. And when Bagpuss wakes up, all his friends wake up too. The mice on the mouse organ woke up and stretched. Madeleine, the rag doll. Gabriel, the toad.
Look.
And last of all, Professor Yaffle, who was a very distinguished old woodpecker.
Oh boy.
He climbed down off his bookend and went to see what it was that Emily had brought.
What a soggy-looking thing. It's a dirty old sort of bag with legs, made of tartan cloth. I haven't the slightest idea of what it is.
Me neither.
I really don't know why Miss Emily brings us things like this.
So we can mend them, of course.
Yeah.
Clean them and restore them into the beautiful things they once were.
Yeah.
Yep, that's all very well, but we don't know what it once was.
Well, we can try and think of things it might have been. Gabriel, what do you think? It looks a bit froggish, but it has a tartan coat. Is it a Scottish frog?
No, frogs have different sort of legs. And anyway, Scottish frogs are green or brownish, just like frogs anywhere else. I've never seen a tartan frog.
Bagpuss, you are good at thinking. If this isn't a Scottish frog, what is it?
Oh, that's difficult. I shall need a thinking cap.
Here's one. Will this do?
Ah, a tartan thinking cap, a tam o' shanter. Oh, thank you. Let me see if I can think Scottish thoughts in a Scottish thinking cap. So Bagpuss thought.
Scottish thoughts.
Oh, yes, I think I know what that is. I think that is a sort of small, soft Hamish.
And what is a small, soft Hamish, if you please?
Ah, it's an old story. A sad story from the Highlands of Scotland. I will tell you.
Okay.
In the far north of Scotland, there once was a sort of creature who lived in lonely, cold, damp places. They kept away from people and lived alone because they were shy and rather frightened sort of creatures. In fact, they were completely unknown for many centuries and didn't even have a name until they were discovered by the famous Tavish MacTavish. Now, Tavish McTavish lived all by himself in a tiny house high up in the mountains.
Yeah.
He lived there not because he liked to live alone, but because he liked to play the bagpipes. He liked to play the bagpipes, but other people didn't like to listen to him playing the bagpipes because he played them terribly badly. Anyway, one evening he was stamping up and down the shelf beside his house in the last of the twilight.
Just going for it.
He was stamping to keep his feet warm and blowing away at his bagpipes. It began to grow dark. He stopped playing and turned to go indoors. He heard a faint noise. It sounded like... Yes, it sounded like somebody playing the bagpipes. He listened delighted. The sound was terrible. There was only one person in the Highlands who played the bagpipes worse than he did, and that was his long-lost brother, Hamish McTavish. The sound came closer. In the dark, a small humpy shape came towards him. He reached down and touched the shape, and said, thinking it was his long-lost brother, "'Tis very small ye are tonight, Hamish." He patted it and said, "'Tis very soft ye are tonight, Hamish." There was no answer. Tavish McTavish was feeling cold about the knees, and he said, "You'll have had your tea then, Hamish." And as there was no reply, he led the way into his house. There, by the light of his oil lamp, he turned to greet his brother. They were both amazed at what they saw. Tavish McTavish was amazed because it wasn't his long-lost brother Hamish, but a small, soft creature. And the small, soft creature was amazed because he thought he had heard another small, soft creature, perhaps his own long-lost brother, crying for help in the cold winter twilight, and had come to help him. Well, once they got over their surprise, they found they were rather pleased to see each other. McTavish made up the fire and closed the door, and they sat down. McTavish sat on a stool by the fire, hugging his cold knees, but the small, soft creature liked the cold, so it sat on the floor and leaned on the door, thus blocking up a rather nasty draught. Tavish McTavish called the creature Hamish in honour of his long-lost brother, and they lived there in the lonely house for a long time. They were very happy together for many years, and then, one evening, as they sat quietly by the fire, they heard a sound they recognised. Was it the distant sound of badly played bagpipes, or was it the distant crying of another soft Hamish? Tavish McTavish looked at his friend. He said, "Is it my long-lost brother we hear playing a skirl on the bagpipes?" The soft Hamish shook its head. "Is it your own long-lost brother calling you to come home?" asked McTavish. The soft Hamish nodded and looked very sad. "Aye, you must go to your own folk," said McTavish. He rose to his feet, he opened the door, and he saw in the twilight a line of small, soft Hamishes standing waiting for their long-lost brother. His own soft Hamish ran to join them, and they all walked away in line over the hill. The noise they made as they sang together was quite awful, but Tavish McTavish stood and listened until the last notes had died away in the distance. Then he went back into his little house. He picked up his bagpipes, but he didn't feel like playing them any more. "Aye," he said, "it's time to go to my own folk." He put on his boots, closed the door of his house, and, tucking his bagpipes under his arm, he walked down to the village where he had been born. He went to live with his sister-in-law, Mavis McTavish. She was a strict lady and did not like the sound of bagpipes, and he never played them again. It's a very sad story.
It is a sad story.
Yep, it's not only sad, it is silly. It's not only silly, it is not true. There's no such thing as a small, soft Hamish that makes noises like bagpipes. It is all nonsense. It's quite obvious what that thing is. It is a porcupine.
A porcupine?
Yes, a porcupine without any spikes.
But there's no such thing. Porcupines have spikes.
Well, maybe it lost them somewhere. What we need is a good song to encourage it to grow some new spikes.
Porcupine Oftentimes. Here's the one. Heave, heave, heave,
A friend of mine, a porcupine, went up in a balloon. He sailed it here, he sailed it there, he sailed it nearly everywhere, except perhaps the moon. He sailed with ease across the seas, an inch above the waves, and only joked at getting soaked, at which an ancient codfish croaked how nicely he behaves. He sailed it rough with snarling tough wild animals below.
He sailed it blind and tried to find some gentle things to live behind the sunset's rosy glow.
He sailed it hot above a lot of scorching desert sand.
He sailed it cold, as I've been told, where crowds of happy penguins hold their flippers hand in hand.
He sailed it high beyond the sky, and then I must explain. A spiky spine of porcupine popped his balloon so proud and fine, and brought it down again.
I must say, that doesn't seem to have had any effect on the poor thing.
Well, I should have thought a song like that would rather put it off growing spikes, not made it want to grow them.
Of course, how silly we are. That thing is quite all right just as it is.
Yes, but what is it?
Oh, it's a porcupine, all right, but it's meant to have no spikes. You add the spikes. It's a pincushion. A porcupine pincushion.
A porcupine pine cushion,
No, a porcupine pincushion.
A porcupine cushion. That's what it is. All we need is pins.
Here's a pin and here's a pingle. Porcupines are always single. Poor old pines, they must not mingle. Pingle, prangle, pingle. Here's a pin and here's a pingle. Porcupines are always single. Poor old pines, they must not mingle. Pingle, prangle, pingle. Here's a pin and here's a pingle. Porcupines are always single. Poor old pines, they must not mingle. Pingle, prangle, pingle. Pingle, prangle, pingle. Pingle, prangle, pingle.
There it is. A perfect porcupine pin cushion. The mice pulled it to the front of the window so that if anybody should happen to come past who had happened to lose a porcupine pin cushion, they would come in and collect it. And so their work was done. Bagpuss gave a big yawn and settled down to sleep. And of course, when Bagpuss goes to sleep, all his friends go to sleep too. The mice were ornaments on the mouse organ. Gabriel and Madeleine were just dolls. And Professor Yaffle was a carved wooden bookend in the shape of a woodpecker. Even Bagpuss himself, once he was asleep, was just an old, saggy cloth cat. Baggy and a bit loose at the seams. But Emily loved him.
Well, I love a bagpipe joke. Listen, I am one of those people who it's very difficult for me to tell if bagpipes are being played well or badly, because I am not a fan. In fact, I reacted to Mull of Kintyre on this channel, and I gave that song the greatest compliment that I could give any song, which was, I didn't hate the bagpipes. And if you can make a bagpipe break that I not only will tolerate, but also, in fact, enjoy, listen, you've done the Lord's work that day. Yeah, the music on this one, I love those. Of course, I love those little songs. The thing that I really like about these, what does it remind me of? It's kind of why it reminds me of like sea shanties. Somehow it makes me think about music about the ocean. I guess it's just that the sort of setup where it's like you think it's going to be one kind of rhyme scheme and then they add an extra couplet on the end. I don't know. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but that is what it makes me think of. And I've never seen, I mean, look, people get very clever with their pincushions. I was 100% flummoxed about like what that little thing was. I love that it was a little, I mean, come on, what's more perfect to be a pincushion than a little porcupine? I loved it. And also, the name Hamish, the first, is it possible that I've never met a human being named Hamish? That's possible. The first time that I ever heard the name Hamish, I was actually living in the UK at the time, and I was a horse crazy kid. I'm kind of my horse craziness has calmed down a little bit. I've loved horses all my life, and I still do. But when I was young, there was a stable when I lived in the UK. There was a stable near where I worked. And, you know, if you're a kid and, you know, you just sort of, like I helped out there. And one of the horses' name was Hamish. And Hamish was one of my first favorite horses. So I have a very soft spot in my heart for the name Hamish. And I think once I left the UK, Hamish is not a name that you hear in the United States particularly often. And I don't think I have, as a matter of fact. So a lot of real, very sweet memory bubbles sort of coming up in this episode. Yeah, I'm trying to sort of string them out as much as I can because I know there's not that many, but yeah. Today was a day for Bagpuss, and Bagpuss came through. Bagpuss and the mice, of course. The mice always. So those are my thoughts. I'd love to hear yours. So I'll meet you down in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.